My name is Angela, and I have a question for you. Have you ever been treated like you were nothing by your own family? Have you ever been left out of a birthday, a wedding, or even a simple dinner, just because your life didn't look perfect to them? Have you ever felt like your worth was measured by your job title, your relationship status, or your bank account? If you've ever walked into a room and felt the silence wrap around you like a judgmental cloud, then I need you to stay with me. And if you can relate even a little bit, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your state or country in the comments. I want to see where the strong souls are tuning in from. People like us. We don't always speak up, do we? We take the pain. We carry it. We smile through the ache. But not today. Today I want to speak for anyone who's ever been quietly left out, talked about behind their back, or judged by the very people who were supposed to love them unconditionally. I want to hear your stories in the comments. Tell me, have you ever been treated like you didn't belong, just because your life wasn't shiny enough? Because that's exactly what happened to me. I wasn't just forgotten. I was erased. On a day that should have been about family. Let me tell you what happened to me on my dad's birthday. I wasn't just uninvited. I was humiliated. When I was offered a position abroad with a salary of $120,000 a year, everyone said I was the lucky one. My parents bragged about it to their friends. My siblings asked if I'd send money back home. And I did, at first. But then Grandma got sick. She wasn't just any grandmother. She raised me. When my mom went back to work right after I was born, it was Grandma who fed me, bathed me, walked me to school, sat up all night when I had the flu. She was my safe place, my everything. So when her health started failing, when she needed someone there full-time, I didn't think twice. I packed my bags, left my job offer on the table and came home. Everyone else had an excuse. My dad said he was too busy running the store. My sister had her kids. My brother said he wasn't emotionally strong enough to see her decline. So it was just me. Bathing her. Feeding her. Changing her sheets. Reading her Bible verses when her hands shook too hard to hold it. For 3 years I didn't complain. Not once. But you know what my family called me during that time? Lazy. Jobless. A burden. I overheard my sister one night laughing over the phone. Angela used to be the one we all looked up to. Now she's just a live-in nurse with no life. They stopped inviting me places. Family dinners went by without a single message. Holidays too. And when Grandma passed peacefully in her sleep, they didn't even wait a full week before asking me what I planned to do with my life now. They said it like I had wasted years. What they didn't know was that while I sat beside Grandma's bed, I wasn't just staring at the walls. I was working, building, creating. I used every bit of savings I had left from my time overseas to start something of my own. No big announcements. No family updates. I just quietly registered a consulting firm online. I used Grandma's old sewing room as my home office. I read every business book I could get my hands on. I networked in online forums late at night. I started with small projects, just enough to keep the lights on, and slowly, steadily I grew. The company was mine. All mine. And it was helping people too. I consulted for small businesses, mostly women trying to build something for their families. I helped them write business plans, secure grants, build their branding. I was good at it. But my family never asked. Never cared. They didn't see me as successful. To them I was still jobless Angela, the one who couldn't get her life together. They didn't know I had clients in 6 states. That I was mentoring young women online. That I had saved more lives than I could count. Not with medicine but with hope. They saw me sitting in Grandma's chair and assumed that's where I stayed. And maybe, in their world, if you're not driving a fancy car or posting about promotions, you don't count. Still it hurt. Every time they looked right through me. Every time they rolled their eyes when I tried to speak. But I kept going. Because I had something stronger than approval. I had purpose. And I knew, one day, all the quiet sacrifice, all the long nights, all the tears I cried in that tiny room next to Grandma's hospital bed, it would mean something. I just didn't expect that day to come so suddenly. And certainly not at my father's birthday party. A few days before my father's birthday, I found out about the party, not from a phone call or a family group chat, but from a Facebook post. My sister had uploaded pictures of the decorations, the cake, and a long list of names tagged under the event. Everyone was there, or at least everyone except me. I stared at that screen, my heart sinking. How could they forget? How could they not even tell me? I picked up the phone and called Dad. When he answered, his voice was calm, almost distant. "Angela," he said, "it's just a small thing. You don't need to come." "Why not?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's nothing personal. Just a small family gathering." I wanted to argue, to tell him that I was his daughter, that I deserved to be there. But instead I swallowed my pride and hung up. Then my phone buzzed with a message from my sister. "We don't count jobless people as family anymore," it read, followed by a laughing emoji. I stared at those words as if they were a slap in the face. Jobless. Lazy. Useless. All those insults that haunted me for years echoed in my mind. I felt the sting deep inside, but something inside me refused to break. I wasn't going to let their cruelty keep me away. So I made a decision. I would go. Not with fireworks or loud confrontations. Not with demands or anger. Just quietly. Just me. No expectations. No hope for a warm welcome. I packed a small gift for Dad, a simple watch he once admired in a store window, and slipped it into my bag. I told no one I was coming. I didn't want pity. I didn't want drama. I just wanted to see him. To be near my family, even if they didn't want me there. That night I drove over to the house, heart pounding but face calm. I parked a few blocks away and walked the rest of the way. Through the windows I saw laughter, the clinking of glasses, and the sound of familiar voices. But when I reached the door, it was clear. No one expected me. No one wanted me. So I stepped inside. Because sometimes family is more than just invitations. Sometimes family means showing up, no matter what. I walked into the party dressed simply. Nothing fancy, just a neat blouse and jeans. I didn't want to draw attention, but as soon as I stepped inside, I could feel every eye on me. It was like the room paused for a moment, and I became the unwanted guest at a gathering I was supposed to belong to. An aunt, standing near the buffet table, leaned over to her friend and whispered loud enough for me to hear, "Why is she here?" Her eyes flicked to me with a mix of confusion and something colder. Disgust, maybe. I tried to keep my head high, but the sting of her words landed hard. The waiter came around with plates of food, and when he reached my seat, he was told to take my plate away. I saw it happen out of the corner of my eye. A silent message that I didn't belong there, that my presence was a mistake. My brother, sitting close by, smirked and said loud enough for others to hear, "You always show up where you're not wanted." I felt every head turn toward me. I wanted to disappear, to melt into the floor. My mother didn't say a word. She avoided my gaze completely, as if I were invisible, or worse, a shame she didn't want to face. Throughout the room, people clinked their glasses and laughed, but their laughter wasn't light or joyful. It was mocking. It was the kind of laughter that isolates, that makes you feel smaller than you are. I kept my mouth shut, even though my heart was breaking with every silent insult, every sideways glance. The pain built inside me like a storm. It was a heavy weight pressing down on my chest. Shame stung like a cruel whisper in my ear. I thought about leaving, walking out the same way I came. But something held me there. Maybe it was the years of silent sacrifice no one had thanked me for. Maybe it was the quiet strength I had built while they judged me. I stood there, feeling small but not defeated. Because deep inside, I knew that night was only the beginning of something much bigger. Just when I thought the night could not get any worse, or maybe it could not get any lonelier, the doors opened again. This time a group of people walked in, dressed in sharp suits, carrying that confident air of importance. Among them was my brother's boss. Yes, the same man everyone at the party seemed to respect and fear. I noticed him immediately because when he looked across the room, his eyes locked on me. I could feel every pair of eyes following his gaze. He smiled slightly, the kind of smile that told you he was about to say something important. Then, walking straight toward me, he said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Ma'am, we've been waiting for you. None of this runs without your final sign-off." The room stopped. Every conversation paused like someone hit the mute button. Glasses stopped clinking mid-toast. The air suddenly felt heavy with silence. Everyone was staring at me. Really staring. Not just a quick glance, but the kind of stare that says, "What is going on here? And who does she think she is?" I stood frozen for a moment, shocked, my heart pounding in my chest. The last thing I expected was to be recognized like this, to be called ma'am with respect, and to be told that the whole party, and the business it was celebrating, could not move forward without me. No one expected this. Not my brother, who had laughed at me earlier. Not my father, who had told me I wasn't even invited. Not my sister who texted that I didn't count as family anymore. The truth was something I had kept secret for a long time. You see, while they were busy judging me for being jobless and lazy, I was quietly building something that no one ever asked about or cared to understand. I had used my savings and some smart moves to start my own consulting company. It was small at first, almost invisible, but I worked hard day and night growing it. I made contacts, learned the business, and built a reputation. Then when my father's company hit hard times, almost collapsing under debts and bad decisions, I stepped in. Not publicly, not to brag, but I injected funds. Money from my company that saved my father's business from sinking. In fact, my consulting firm had recently bought out my father's company. That's right. I was the owner. The silent boss. And my brother's boss? He was actually my employee. That moment, the truth was out. The room was silent. You could feel the tension like thick fog. People who had mocked me, whispered behind my back, ignored me, now looked at me with wide eyes and mouths slightly open. My brother's smirk was gone. His face was frozen in disbelief. He looked like he wanted to say something, but no words came. My father's gaze flickered between anger and shock. I saw him swallow hard as if my success was bitter to taste. Even my mother avoided my eyes, but I knew she heard every word. Relatives who had been sipping wine, clinking glasses, and laughing at my expense now sat in stunned silence. I felt a strange mix of calm and pride rise inside me. All those years they called me worthless, lazy, and a failure. They didn't know what I was building quietly. I took a step forward, the weight of their stares like a spotlight, and I spoke clearly. Yes, I am the CEO of the company. I was the one who saved Dad's business with my investments. I was the one who gave the final approval for every big decision you see today. The room was heavy with silence. No one could believe it. It was a complete reversal of respect. The same people who laughed at me had to now swallow their pride and face the truth. I wasn't the jobless daughter or the lazy sister anymore. I was the boss. The woman behind the scenes who made everything possible. I saw some relatives whispering, some shaking their heads, others looking embarrassed. My brother's boss nodded at me, a sign of respect, maybe even approval. This moment was more than just personal victory. It was a lesson for all of them. Respect is not something that comes from a title or the way you look on social media. It's earned by hard work, sacrifice, and silent strength. It's not given to you by your family just because you share a last name. That night, I realized how strong I had become, how much power I held quietly while they judged me from the sidelines. I also realized that sometimes the biggest battles happen inside your own family. The ones who should have been your biggest supporters had instead become your harshest critics. But I didn't let their opinions stop me. I built my life on my own terms. That night I took back my dignity. I became the woman who not only survived their rejection but rose above it to become their boss, in every sense. And from that day on I knew things would never be the same. The laughter and mockery stopped. The cold shoulders warmed just a little. They looked at me differently now, not with pity, not with judgment, but with respect. I finally had the last word in a family that once silenced me. I hope my story reminds you that sometimes, the greatest strength comes from silence, from sacrifice, and from believing in yourself when no one else does. Have you ever had a moment like this, where you surprised everyone, especially your family? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. Remember, no matter how much they doubt you, your true worth shines in the actions you take, not in the opinions they have. The silence lasted only a few seconds before the room erupted, not with cheers but with stunned whispers and wide-eyed looks. Everyone's jaw literally dropped. The very people who had mocked me, called me lazy and worthless, were now speechless. Their eyes flickered between me and my brother's boss, trying to make sense of what they had just heard. I saw my sister's face twist in disbelief, her lips parting as if she wanted to say something. Finally, she blurted out, "Why didn't you tell us? You should have told us." Her voice had a mix of anger and regret, like she was trying to catch up to something she missed for so long. I looked at her, smiling, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was cold, like the frost you feel on a winter morning. "You never asked," I said quietly, letting those words hang in the air. They were simple, but they cut deeper than any insult. The room shifted uncomfortably. My mother avoided my eyes and busied herself with her glass, pretending to sip something. My father looked away, clearly upset but too proud to say anything. Other relatives began whispering, trying to change the subject, but I wasn't done. Taking a slow breath, I stood taller and spoke clearly so everyone could hear. Respect should never be based on someone's title or income, I said, my voice steady but firm. I was judged for not being flashy enough, for not having a perfect life like you all wanted to see. You judged me by the surface, but you never saw what I was carrying inside. The sacrifices, the sleepless nights, the tears, and the silent struggles. I paused, looking at each of them. I could see the shame starting to creep into some faces, especially my sister's. I still showed up here tonight, I continued, not for applause or congratulations. I came to see who claps when you're quiet, who stands by you when no one is watching, and who values the person beneath the surface. There was a stillness after my words, like the room itself was holding its breath. Then I looked directly at my family and said the part one had been rehearsing in my mind for months. This time I won't be the one walking away in shame. But I will be the one walking away. Those words hit harder than any insult they had ever thrown at me. Some people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Others looked away, ashamed to meet my gaze. My sister's face was pale now. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say more, but no words came out. She knew she had been caught in her own mistakes. My father cleared his throat, finally breaking the silence. Angela, we didn't know. We thought you were struggling. I shook my head. You didn't ask, Dad. You didn't want to know. The truth was painful but real. My family had judged me for years without ever trying to understand. It wasn't about money or status. It was about respect, kindness, and seeing each other beyond the surface. I glanced at my brother. His smirk was gone. He looked smaller now, maybe realizing how wrong he had been. I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Relief because I had finally spoken my truth. Sadness because it had taken this moment of humiliation for them to even listen. After my speech, the mood in the room changed. People started talking quietly, some apologizing, others avoiding eye contact. I knew things would never be the same again. But one thing was clear. I had taken back my dignity. And from now on I would walk my own path with pride and strength. Because respect is earned by actions, not by shallow judgments. That night I learned that sometimes the hardest battles are with the people who should love you the most. But winning those battles means standing tall, even when they try to push you down. Now that you've heard my story, I want to talk to you directly. This is not just my story. It's a story many of us share, though we rarely speak about it out loud. Have you ever been excluded by your own people? I don't just mean strangers or people far away. I mean the people who are supposed to love you the most. Your family, your closest friends, the ones who should stand by your side no matter what. Maybe you've been left out of celebrations, ignored at family dinners, or treated like you don't matter just because your life didn't look perfect. Maybe you were quietly judged because you didn't have the right job, the right spouse, or the right status. I want you to know that if you have ever felt that way, you are not alone. It hurts. It cuts deep. Being rejected or ignored by your own blood is one of the hardest things to bear. But here's the truth. Your worth is not measured by what others see on the surface. It's not about the fancy job titles, the money in the bank, or the image you project. Your worth comes from who you are inside. The strength, the courage, the kindness, and the resilience that no one can take away. Have you ever kept your success quiet, just to protect your peace? Maybe you worked hard behind the scenes, built something amazing, or overcame impossible odds. But you stayed silent because you didn't want the drama, the jealousy, or the unwanted attention. I did that too. I never shouted about my achievements. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone. I just wanted to live my life quietly and with dignity. But sometimes, life forces us to stand up and show the world who we really are, whether they like it or not. That night, when my brother's boss announced who I really was, the whole room changed. The same people who had laughed at me were suddenly silent. The same people who had treated me like nothing were forced to see me as someone powerful. It wasn't about revenge or pride. It was about reclaiming my worth, showing myself in the world that I mattered. So I want to ask you, if you've ever been treated like nothing but rose like fire, if you refused to stay small no matter what they said or did, comment, I'm still standing below. I want to see every strong soul who chose to rise, who chose courage over fear, and who chose love over hate. Because you are not invisible. You are not worthless. You are powerful beyond measure. And your story matters. Thank you for listening to mine. I'm Angela, and this was the moment I reclaimed my worth. Now it's your turn. Stand tall. Speak your truth. And never let anyone tell you who you are. I'm sending strength and love to each of you. Remember, sometimes the quietest people are the strongest warriors. Keep shining, keep fighting, and keep standing. I'll see you in the comments.